Weird mannerisms of narcissistic abuse survivors. Have you ever noticed someone acting in ways that seem out of place? Perhaps they're overly self-conscious or seem oddly defensive over the smallest things. Maybe they've developed odd habits that appear to have no real explanation. While these mannerisms may seem strange, there could be a deeper hidden reason behind them. For those who have survived narcissistic abuse, their reactions and behaviors are often the result of years of manipulation, emotional trauma, and psychological distress. This article aims to explore some of the weird mannerisms these survivors exhibit, and in doing so, shed light on the invisible scars that remain long after the abuse has ended. You've probably seen it before. Someone constantly looking over their shoulder, checking their phone for messages even when no one is texting, or perhaps they seem overly cautious when speaking, as if they're walking on eggshells. These behaviors aren't just random quirks or personality traits. They're often the result of surviving a narcissistic relationship where everything you said, did, or thought was scrutinized, twisted, or invalidated. The survivors of narcissistic abuse live with the consequences of these interactions, and their mannerisms can be a sign of how deep that impact runs. But why do these behaviors happen, and how are they linked to narcissistic abuse? It's fascinating and heartbreaking to think that a person's outward mannerisms could tell you so much about their internal battles. In fact, these strange behaviors are often ways survivors try to cope with the ongoing fear of judgment, rejection, or worse, reliving the trauma. They've lived in a world where nothing they did was ever good enough, and now they're left trying to navigate life with a heightened sense of hypervigilance. It's a learned survival mechanism, and it affects everything they do. What makes it even more troubling is how these mannerisms are often misinterpreted by others. People might dismiss these actions as signs of insecurity or eccentricity, but they are often far more complex. These behaviors are survivors' attempts to manage the emotional chaos narcissistic abuse has left behind. At times, these mannerisms may seem exaggerated or extreme, but in reality, they represent the deep psychological damage that has been inflicted upon them. So, let's take a closer look at some of these peculiar behaviors and explore the real reasons behind them. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you find this video insightful. Narcissistic abuse is something that often flies under the radar, but understanding it can make a huge difference for survivors. By sharing this video, you're helping raise awareness and offer support to those who may feel isolated or misunderstood. Now let's get started. One of the first weird behaviors you might notice in a narcissistic abuse survivor is hypervigilance. This isn't just being aware of your surroundings. It's a constant, nearly obsessive state of alertness. Survivors often feel like they are on edge, always waiting for the next criticism, the next attack, or the next moment of gaslighting. They spent so much time in relationships where they had to be constantly on guard for the narcissist's emotional outbursts or manipulative tactics that it becomes second nature. Even in safe environments, they may feel the need to scan the room, read the emotional atmosphere, or check that they're doing everything right. For them, any shift in energy, tone, or expression can trigger a response. They've learned to predict and respond to subtle cues because doing so was a matter of emotional survival in their abusive relationship. Over time, this hypervigilance can manifest in strange behaviors, like always looking over their shoulder or reacting defensively to even the slightest hint of criticism. It's a survival instinct that, unfortunately, doesn't turn off just because the threat is no longer present. Another odd but common behavior is people-pleasing. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often go out of their way to keep others happy, sometimes to the point of neglecting their own needs. This behavior is rooted in years of trying to appease a narcissist who made them feel like their worth depended entirely on how much they could please others. Narcissists often devalue their victims, and this can leave survivors with a chronic fear of rejection. They may bend over backwards, apologizing for things they didn't do or over-explaining themselves, even when it's unnecessary. They fear that if they don't keep everyone happy, they'll be abandoned or criticized, just like they were during the abusive relationship. What's even more bizarre is how survivors might feel an overwhelming need to avoid conflict. They become so conditioned to walking on eggshells around their abuser that even the slightest disagreement with a friend or family member can send them spiraling. They might avoid difficult conversations, change the subject abruptly, or even apologize preemptively, fearing that a disagreement will escalate into a full-blown emotional attack. On the opposite side of the spectrum, some survivors may develop defensive mechanisms that seem odd or exaggerated. They may suddenly snap, get overly emotional, or react in ways that don't seem proportional to the situation at hand. This is because narcissistic abuse trains the victim to be constantly prepared for an emotional attack. The narcissist's behavior could range from silent treatment to verbal outbursts to full-on rage, and over time, survivors learn to prepare themselves for those emotional landmines. This heightened state of anxiety often comes out as defensiveness, even in situations where the threat isn't real. Then there's the matter of over-apologizing. Many survivors of narcissistic abuse have internalized the belief that they're always at fault, no matter the situation. Narcissists are known for never taking accountability for their actions and constantly shifting the blame onto others. This manipulation can lead survivors to believe they are always the problem. Over-apologizing becomes a way to smooth over any potential issues, even when they're not in the wrong. It's a coping mechanism for their deeply ingrained feelings of guilt and shame. A less talked about, but equally fascinating mannerism is numbing emotions. For survivors, it's often safer to disconnect from their feelings altogether than to feel the overwhelming pain that comes with betrayal and manipulation. This emotional detachment can come across as cold or distant to others, but it's a defense mechanism. It allows survivors to avoid being hurt again by numbing themselves to the emotional weight of their past trauma. The consequence: they may struggle to connect with their feelings, or they may even feel empty at times, as if they're just going through the motions of life. Another quirky behavior might be chronic self-doubt. Narcissistic abuse can erode a person's sense of self, leaving them questioning their worth and reality. Gaslighting, a manipulation tactic often used by narcissists, makes survivors doubt their own perceptions, memories, and feelings. They might second-guess themselves constantly, unsure of what is real and what has been distorted. This self-doubt can spill over into all areas of their life, including relationships, career choices, and even daily decisions. Finally, many survivors experience difficulty with trust. After being repeatedly betrayed by a narcissist, it becomes incredibly difficult to trust anyone, even those who have done nothing wrong. Survivors may constantly test others or push them away out of fear of being hurt again. It's not that they want to isolate themselves or hurt their relationships. It's simply that they've learned to expect the worst from others because of the abuse they endured. In closing, it's important to recognize that these weird mannerisms aren't quirks or personality flaws. They are the outward signs of deep-seated trauma and survival mechanisms. If you or someone you know is exhibiting these behaviors, it's crucial to approach them with compassion and understanding. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often carry invisible scars that affect every part of their lives. And while these behaviors may seem strange to outsiders, They are often the result of years of manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional neglect. If this video has been helpful in shedding light on the complexities of narcissistic abuse, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. By raising awareness, we can help more survivors heal and find the support they need. Thank you for reading, and remember, recovery is a journey, not a destination. If you're a survivor, be kind to yourself. You've been through enough, and healing is possible. Thank you again for your time and attention. Let's continue to learn, share, and grow together, one step at a time. The worst thing a narcissist does as they get old. There's a saying that goes, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." In the case of narcissists, this couldn't be more accurate. As narcissists age, their behavior doesn't necessarily mellow out or improve with time. In fact, as they get older, the worst traits of their personality tend to become more pronounced, and the consequences of their manipulations grow more intense. But what's the worst thing a narcissist does as they get old? Is it that they become more desperate for attention? Or perhaps it's their complete disregard for the people around them. The truth is, the most destructive aspect of an aging narcissist is something far more insidious: the emotional toll they inflict on those who have endured their abuse over time. As narcissists enter their later years, they face the unavoidable reality of aging, decline, and loss of power. However, their narcissistic tendencies, desperation for control, fear of being irrelevant, and a need for constant admiration, don't vanish with age. In fact, they often get worse. If you've ever been involved with a narcissist or witnessed one as they grow older, you may have noticed that these individuals often refuse to accept the passing of time. They cling to their false sense of grandeur, their desperate need for attention, and their manipulative behaviors in a way that becomes even more damaging as they lose the ability to hide it. The worst thing a narcissist does as they age is not only hurt the people around them, but also continue to play a game that they know they can't win. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at how aging narcissists escalate their harmful behaviors, and why these actions have such a profound impact on the people who continue to care for or be involved with them. Whether it's in their relationships, their family dynamics, or their social circles, narcissists in their twilight years become increasingly toxic. But why is this the case? How does aging impact a narcissist's already fragile ego? And what can we learn for understanding the worst things they do as they age? Before we dive into the details, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this article. If you or someone you know has dealt with a narcissist, this information could offer valuable insights into how these individuals operate as they get older. Understanding their behaviors can help you protect yourself and recognize the patterns they will inevitably repeat. Now, let's get into the harsh reality of what happens when a narcissist grows old. One of the first things you'll notice about an aging narcissist is that their desperation for validation intensifies. As time goes on, their ability to attract attention and admiration begins to diminish. The physical allure that once made them feel like the center of the universe fades. They are no longer the life of the party, the charismatic leader, or the object of everyone's affection. This decline in their outward appeal hits them like a ton of bricks because their entire self-worth was built on external validation. In their younger years, narcissists could rely on their charm, good looks, or achievements to maintain their inflated sense of self. As they age, these tools become less effective, and they begin to lose their influence. The reality of aging, a process that they cannot escape, becomes a constant reminder of their impermanence. As a result, many narcissists become obsessed with finding new ways to keep themselves in the spotlight. They may resort to more extreme tactics, such as trying to manipulate their family, friends, or even strangers into giving them the attention they crave. At the same time, they might also begin to isolate themselves from others. Narcissists often create a world where they are the star, but as they get older and more difficult to deal with, their relationships begin to deteriorate. Their need for admiration becomes so consuming that they push people away with their toxic behavior. Family members, once willing to tolerate their egotistical antics, may start to distance themselves. Friends, tired of constantly being used for narcissistic supply, may cut ties. But the narcissist isn't capable of accepting that the problem lies with them. Instead, they'll blame everyone else for their isolation, accusing others of not appreciating them or being unfair. In reality, it's their own inability to maintain healthy relationships that drives people away, but they refuse to see it. In many cases, an aging narcissist begins to view their aging process as a threat to their sense of control and superiority. As they grow older, they are faced with the reality that they can no longer manipulate the same way they once did. They may start to act out in increasingly erratic ways, using guilt, threats, and emotional manipulation to maintain some level of control over their family members or loved ones. They might demand that others cater to their needs and act like they're still the same powerful figure they once were. However, this behavior often backfires as their lack of self-awareness and inability to adapt to their new situation becomes more apparent. As they get older, their self-absorption becomes more blaring. Narcissists have always been self-centered, but the older they get, the less they care about hiding it. In fact, many narcissists will start to openly expect their family or caregivers to drop everything for them. The idea of reciprocity, of offering support or care in return for love and companionship, is lost on them. Instead, they see any form of kindness or care from others as a means to an end, something to be used to maintain their sense of importance. For example, elderly narcissists may demand constant attention from their children or partners, believing that they are entitled to be the center of attention no matter the circumstances. They may guilt-trip or manipulate their loved ones into providing them with the admiration and care they require, even if it comes at the expense of others' well-being. They'll use any excuse, from their health issues to their aging appearance, to ensure that they remain the focus of everyone's attention. And if they feel even the slightest hint of neglect or abandonment, they will retaliate, often in cruel or manipulative ways. Another alarming aspect of an aging narcissist is their inability to come to terms with their own mortality. Narcissists have an inflated sense of self-importance, which leads them to believe they are invincible, untouchable, or even eternal. As they age, they begin to face the harsh reality that they are not immune to time. This existential crisis, however, doesn't lead them to introspection or growth. Instead, it often causes them to lash out even more aggressively. Their desperation for power and control grows as they see their physical and mental faculties decline. To compensate for their waning influence, they may become even more volatile, trying to manipulate others into reaffirming their importance. The most insidious thing, however, is how narcissists manipulate their aging process to control others. As they grow older and more frail, they often play the victim, using their physical decline as a tool to extract sympathy, care, and attention from those around them. They may exaggerate their health issues, making it seem as though they are on the brink of death, just to elicit a reaction from others. This victimhood becomes their final form of manipulation, ensuring that their loved ones remain tethered to them out of guilt, fear, or obligation. But make no mistake, this is just another power play, another way for the narcissist to ensure that they remain in control, even as they near the end of their lives. Finally, As narcissists get older, they are faced with the stark reality that they are running out of time. They know that their window for achieving greatness, whether it's in the form of relationships, career achievements, or personal milestones, is closing. This sense of urgency pushes many narcissists to take extreme measures to ensure that their legacy remains intact. They might try to rewrite their life story, glossing over the damage they caused, or attempt to manipulate those around them into thinking they were always a saint. It's a last-ditch effort to secure their place in the world, to have their legacy remembered in a way that benefits their fragile ego. In conclusion, the worst thing a narcissist does as they age is not just the harm they inflict on others. It's the extent to which they